up, friends? My name is Skylent, and today I want to talk about my top 10 list for IO games. Got IO. So IO games are browser-based games, generally kind of end with a, .io, and many of them are copying sort of like the aesthetic or the design, and sometimes just outright actually literally copying every single thing about Agar.io. I just want to say that these games are going to be somewhat reminiscent of Agar.io. They have .io at the end of it, and they're just browser-based games. If you want to see full inclusion of all sorts of different kinds of browser-based games, I have a whole list just for you guys there. You can click on the screen right now if you want to see that, but this is going to be .io games. These are open lobbies. They feel like very small, room-sized MMOs in a way, if that makes sense. They're very light, very casual, easy to jump into, and they're basically battle royale style games in one way or another, in the shape of Agar.io. So, with that in mind, top 10 IO games. Alright, so starting out the list, I will mention Agar.io. Agar you can play on your mobile devices. A lot of these you can also play on mobile devices, but all these browser-based. Just type, literally guys, it's not just the name, it's like the web address. You type in Agar.io. It's going to be the case for all these games. Anyways, Agar, or Agario, some people would call it, whatever. It's, you know what it is. You've seen it, you probably have played it. Some people have played it a lot. It is a fun game. So I think it's kind of gone a little bit downhill, maybe-ish, since they added in microtransactions. It's what happens when you get super duper popular sometimes, but that will hopefully allow funding for new games, or you can just, check out these other developers taking the concept and branching it out, going in a little bit different directions, and maybe overall just being a better, more polished game. As we see further down in the list, some more interesting concepts are being explored, but Agar.io was the father of them all. I mentioned that in my other top 10 list, and I will mention it here. Agar is still a solid game. Yes, there's other, clones, exact clones of this game, but I think the originator is probably the most polished, and from here on out, you should go into a more original direction, which is going to be every other one on this list. Now, I think let's go ahead and talk about the next popular IO game. It's going to be Slither.io. Slither is basically competitive Snake. I mean, it's like Snake the MMO. PvP Snake. It's basically Agar, okay, where you are an object trying to eat smaller objects. But the unique thing about Slither versus Agar, where in Agar you eat just smaller circles, in Slither you are a snake, and you're trying not to hit the sides of other snakes. You can also speed up and kind of trap other people so that they are forced to be devoured. It's very interesting because once they actually are destroyed, you don't instantly devour something. Like once something runs into the side of another object, they are obliterated, but then there's like their energy or their particulates kind of remain, and everybody is just like can free for all and just eat the carcass of whoever just died. It's a very interesting sort of gameplay aesthetic. And Agar is very straightforward, and Slither, it's like actually the opposite of that. It is the opposite of straightforward. Literally, you are trying to be coy and just kind of like curve around everything and be sneaky, kind of like a snake. But yeah, I think it's really appropriate just to say it's basically competitive Snake the MMO, and it's kind of how it plays. It looks all cute and everything, but this game's hardcore, guys. Next up on the list, we have a game called Liemax IO. It's incredibly polished looking. It looks extremely clean. I've only had a couple of stuttering issues with the game, but it is newer. And I just want to say that it's essentially Agario mixed with Slitherio. Slither.io and Agar.io. Basically, you do have this mechanic where you can speed up, just like Slither.io. And when you do this, you actually lay down a trail. But like Agar.io, it's going to actually take your mass from your creature or blob or whatever. It's going to take your mass away. So you need to do this specifically to trap other people. Once they have been trapped and they have eaten your traps and they kind of explode, then you can eat other people and then their energies and regrow. So instead of splitting, you actually have the mechanics of Slither.io, which I really like. The game seems to be a lot faster, and at the same time still has that sort of like trappish, sort of sneaky snaky sort of gameplay like Slither.io, but it's straightforward like Agar.io. So it's kind of right in between those two games. And while not too explosive with originality, it's still just highly polished and a pretty interesting game. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into some pretty weird territory. We have Narwhal.io. Narwhal is unlike the previous three, where they had varying degrees of intensity. They're more slower paced though. Narwhal is like instantaneously ham from the get-go. You're going berserk. You're a narwhal, and you're trying to pierce the booties of other narwhals. And doing this gives you random power-ups and boosts so that you can pierce better, faster, and stronger, and harder. And okay, this is awkward with no context, but Narwhal is actually really, really fun. If you want to just literally jump in and go just absolute insanity from the very beginning, go 0 to 100% in 1 second, Narwhal is that game. Then again, it's very, very hard to survive and actually, really participate in the game. Some people like the slower gameplay, so maybe this isn't for everyone, but it's at least worth trying. It doesn't take much time at all to really get into it. Now, coming off the explosivity of Narwhal, I want to talk about Wings.io, which is actually a very similar concept. Flying around, but instead of piercing, you get lots of weapons, guns, your planes, and you're shooting other planes, but you still have like the randomness, you have the speed, you have the intensity, you have all these different ways of killing people and power-ups and craziness, and yeah, it's still just as explosive as Narwhal. It doesn't last as long, but it is super fun just to jump in and have a hoop and a holler, and actually, if you really like games that are very mechanically intensive, which generally Agar and Slither and Liemax, those aren't, Wings.io is really going to push your aiming skills, your strategy, your tactics, maybe not so much, but mechanically, it's freaking intense. And the next game I want to talk about is a game called Tank Wars. Tank Wars is just like it sounds like. You spawn just like any other IO game, and it's just free-for-all, or there might be team deathmatch game modes, but you spawn instead of as a blob or as some shape, killing other shapes and devouring other shapes, you are a tank, and you are shooting other tanks. But the cool thing is that they add this sort of detail to the game, so it's not just the minimalist art style, and maybe you like that, maybe you don't, and we're seeing more IO games, incorporate stuff like this, more detail graphically, but Tank Wars, it's still simplistic, but it does add a little bit more detail. You actually play as tanks, shooting other tanks, and the game plays pretty freaking fast. You get into the action pretty quickly, but instead of it being as intuitive as Agar, like it just follows the mouse pointer, this game you actually have to keep in mind the orientation of your tank and where you are aiming and everyone else's orientation, where they're aiming and their momentum. You also have different abilities like the vacuum and call in airstrikes, and you have to actually pick up pickups. It's pretty cool. The game is fast and furious, but overall, it's definitely a breath of fresh air from the minimalist and simple games that we are used to in IO. But still, at the same time, it's not too in-depth. It's not too ridiculous all at once. Another game for the list is going to be a game called Terror.io, Terror.io. The full game is actually called Territories, and essentially, this is an early access game that allows you to make territories. I mean, it's played just like a normal IO game. You spawn into sort of like an MMO map, into a lobby, and you try to get bigger, but the difference is it's not really you trying to get bigger, it's not really you trying to evolve, it's more like you're focusing on actually sort of making a territory for yourself, an outline, sort of a home, a nice little place, a nice little nook into the MMO space, into the lobby where you can exist, and other people are going to want to try to encroach into your territory. So it's basically like a coloring game. You're coloring a territory, and if somebody comes onto your colors, you run into them to destroy them, and you try to take over other people's areas, other people's territories. It's really, really simple. It really is, but at the same time, there's a lot of depth and strategy, and I could see this game going places, especially with team-based. And right now, there is no customization with the character or the lines or anything, but maybe later on, we'll have customization with colors and stuff like that. I really can't wait to see where this game could go. Right now, super bare bones, but those bones are looking pretty good. And next up on the list, we have a game called Wilds.io. Wilds is essentially a melee combat free-for-all MMO thing. You run around, there are different classes you can pick from, but you just basically run around and smack other people. There are teams and stuff, but there's a couple of elements to the game that makes it very interesting, even without the really cool pixel art, the upgrade graphics from, well, at least the minimalistic shapes that we are used to, but you have items that you can actually pick up and throw at other enemies. You do have sort of a mature sort of aesthetic to the game as well, and overall it's very fast-paced, action-packed, and they even add a little bit of dimension because you can actually jump, and you do have certain abilities, like I said, with the pickups and items like bombs and pick up swords and throw swords and stuff. And you also have this sort of kind of creep element to the game where instead of running and mining certain resources that are stagnant or actually chasing down different shapes, it's more like the shapes are chasing you. You actually have these little minions, these creeps that run towards you and try to kill you. So there is a PvE element in this PvP game other than just farming like we're used to in Agar type games. Personally, I'd love to see more classes, more progression, more items, more mayhem, but the core of this game is absolutely solid, and that's why it's on this top 10 list. And the next one on the list, we have slash.io, and the slash is spelled with a 4, guys, for the A, so keep that in mind. Type that in, SL4SH.io, and you're gonna have some fun. Now, this game requires really good reflexes, okay? It's pretty fast, pretty furious. Now, in ways, okay? Like, when you actually get into combat, it's really intense. It's not floaty like Agar in any way. It's not slow-paced. It's extremely fast-paced because you're literally darting, dashing, and slashing back and forth. It's a very agile game, but at the same time, its pace is actually longer and slower because you actually grow. I mean, not in size. You're not slowly just eating little orbs and then, you know, slowly eating other players. It's more like you are actually dashing and darting around, killing these other shapes and then consuming these little orbs, whatever. You're just eating things, and then you can actually gain attributes. So at the very beginning of the game, you do get to choose classes, which is pretty cool, you know, a way to start out so that it's a little bit different. You get a little bit of uniquity with that compared to, you know, games like Agar. But then as you play the game, you also get attributes. You know, you can get more health, more damage, more speed, better vision, stuff like that. Now, you don't evolve classes, so you're just kind of stuck with the one at the very beginning, but in the end, it's still pretty cool. It's definitely a step up, in my opinion, and it changes the game around. And now my number 1 for IO game, alright? It's gonna be Deep.io. DIEP.io. In fact, I spent so much time on this game recently that I had to include it in my top 10 most played free-to-play list over at freemmostation.com. Absolutely, this is one of the best free-to-play games I've ever played. This is absolutely the game that inspired me to make this list. And in fact, it's like the game that got me to explore this whole genre, got me to explore and appreciate everything that this game has to offer, that the genre has to offer, and I'm really excited to see where things go from here next year in the years to come with browser-based games, and specifically this very niche genre, which I don't know if it's even niche anymore because it's pretty freaking popular. Thank you so much, Father Agar. But Deep.io is the next generation. So Deep, you play as a blob, of course, and you're shooting other shapes, so you're actually shooting to consume and level up, but you do level up. You do have attributes, but since it's a shooting game, you actually can attribute, you know, attributes. You can actually change the way your projectiles work. And one thing that really makes this game deep is the fact that you evolve. Your class actually changes. You can choose and branch out different classes as you play the game. So yeah, you can get more health, you can get more speed, you can change your bullet reload speed or bullet speed itself, bullet damage, all that cool stuff. Yeah, but you also change functionally how you actually play the game by either evolving into like a twin shot, into a triple shot, into having a flank cannon, into having a sniper cannon, a sniper shot. There's all sorts of different guns and barrels that you can choose from by leveling up and branching out your classes, and that makes the game extremely fun. Games like this, which is all about leveling up, which is all about progression, this game gives you the most fluidity with that progression and gives you the most amount of customization. It's extremely fun, fast-paced whenever you're in combat because it's kind of like a bullet hell, but at the same time it gives you that customizable pace so that you can just, you know, you can slowly kind of farm up, or you can go ham from the very beginning and go full-on assassin, and everything in between. You want to go flamethrower build? Maybe you could do that. Hey, you could even do melee, and this game also incorporates physics, so like whenever you shoot a bullet, it pushes you a little bit, so you can go fast reload speed and then go high melee damage and then shoot behind you so that you get extra speed to run into people. The game is just super deep. That's why I've been spending a lot of time on it. That's why I've been having a lot of fun. I can't wait to see where the genre goes from here, but for now, I'm kind of just stuck deep inside Deep.io. Thanks so much for watching, friends. These games are truly, honestly, really just fun browser games. They're great. Anybody can jump in and play for as long as they want, then get as hardcore as they want, or you can be as casual as you'd like it. For a game that's jump in and play, stay if you want to, or leave whenever you want to. It's the best. It epitomizes browser-based gameplay. I really enjoy this genre of game, and I put Agar.io in my, top 10 best browser games, and I really wanted to mention, the clones and put a whole list for just these kind of games, because honestly, they deserve it. They're fun, and even though they seem simple on the surface, there's actually a lot of depth to them when you actually start and play them for just a little bit. Have fun, friends. These are all fast and free games. Jump in, the water's fine. My name's Skylent. Stay tuned for more top 10s, and I'll see you again next time.